So I'm actually really excited about making this video, and it's going to be about jungle routes. So let's get to it. We got a nice little map of Summoner's Rift right here, and I'm just going to run you down a little bit of some basic jungle information that you may not know. Right off the bat, all camps respawn with 1 minute 40. That's their time, which means that if you kill it at 2 minutes, it's gonna spawn back at 3:40. That's quite a bit of time. That's where they give quite a bit of experience. Now here's another one. When you kill a camp, it will respawn stronger. But if you don't, it will stay that level and it will give that same amount of gold and experience throughout the whole game until you kill it. Then it will start gaining levels, and then you have to kill it again for it to be stronger, for it to give you more. So these are a little bit of things that you should take into consideration where you plan your jungle route. And what I mean by jungle route is that where you start and how you plan your map movements out, and a lot of this needs to be done on the fly, but this one gives you guys a little bit of the early game. And another thing is that 140, the spawn time, is just enough time that if you were to do a full clear as a farming champion, let's say right here that you jungle, you're a Vi or Rek'Sai, and you can do, like, you get a great leash, you can do Gromp, Blue, Wolves, Razorbeaks, Red, Krugs, Recall, goes straight back to Gromp, and it'll be up, and you'll get all the camps as soon as they start to spawn. Like, as soon as you start moving there, they'll be spawning. So that's kind of the rough time, about 140. Now let's get to some routes. Actually, let's get a little bit more basics. I don't know the level you guys are at, but just so you guys know, smiting is very, very important now. So you need to know what your smite entails when you use it on certain camps. When you use it on Gromp, that's when you want to power farm. It gives you a lot of AoE damage. Gromp is also the best one for counter jungling, especially if you want to, let's say, do a really quick invade, do like Gromp to red and invade like this, like Gromp red. It's going to be better than doing blue because the AoE damage will allow you to kill the red buff a lot quicker. When you use it on the wolves, what that means is that you are either, if you're using it on your own, you are worried about an invade, or you want to see if they're warding your jungle. You just want to kind of have an idea as to what's happening. It's a good one to use if you want to really secure a blue buff and you're worried that you might get invaded. Or if you use it alternatively on the enemy's jungle right here, you want to get side of them. You want to see if the jungler is on the other side of the map, kind of get an idea what he's up to. Really great buff. It's better than a ward in a lot of situations. Really great one. But the best one by far is gonna be right here, your Razorbeaks. Now you wanna be smiting this one as much as possible, especially after your first buy, because it's pretty much an oracles. It's an oracles, and you kind of have to run around and see where the ward is at. That is huge. I'll get on to that a little bit later. And then the Krugs. To be honest, Krugs is the most useless one. You really have to smite it, like, if you have nothing better to do. You will, like, if that's where you start your route, or like you just got back from a huge power farm, starting at Krugs, you want to start farming some more. That's the one you want to use it on. I wouldn't recommend it because the vision from Razorbeaks is a lot better. And lastly, you got your buffs. Smiting blue, honestly, the only time it's worth it is if you really want to get the blue buff going. Give it away to your mid lane really quickly. You don't want to be there. You got better things to do. And red buff just to heal. That's really the only thing. If you can avoid, if you don't need to heal, don't use it on red buff. Save it for the Razorbeak. Save it for the crab. If you need to contest the crab, save it for that one. And I think that's about the basics that we have for it. I'm kind of assuming that you guys already knew that, but just wanted to double check and make sure that we're on the same page. Now, here are some routes that you can use for your early game. Now, all of these are perfectly mirrored in both sides of the map, so they work for blue side and red side. And if I say that I'm starting Gromp Blue Wolves, the mirror of that would be Krugs Red Blue. I mean Krugs Red Razorbeaks. So you kind of get the idea. The map is pretty similar. So the first one right here, we're gonna have just a. This is one of my favorite routes. All of this really depends on getting a leash. You need a leash. Like, it doesn't have to be a great leash. You just need a pretty good leash. That's it. Like a couple hits, one spell, no big deal. So you start Gromp. Bam, you do your Gromp. You do your blue. You do your wolves, and then you do your Razorbeaks. But by the time you do Razorbeaks, if you smited your Gromp, by the time you start doing these, your smite will be back up. This one's better if you get a really good leash though, because a lot of times, if you don't get a great leash, your smite will be back up at wolves, you won't be too healthy. So if you have a really good leash, this is my favorite one to do. You end up here, you smite it, and then you recall. Now what that does is it gives you the Razorbeak buff. Now when you respawn, you go back to your base, and you appear your red buff now, you will have complete control of the vision in your jungle. So let's say somebody went in and wanted to invade you and counter jungle you, like for instance the enemy jungler did red and they kind of just sat around waiting for you to start it. If there's a ward there, you'll be able to spot that ward and know if something's up. Now after you do that, this is a better one, this is a good one to get an offensive pink right here, because what's going to happen is you can recall with this amount of money and have enough money for a pink ward and your jungle item. So you recall right here, you take the red buff with a pink ward, and now with the vision that the Razorbeak gives you, you are free to go into the enemy jungle unspotted. If you are, you will be alerted. Most of the time you won't be spotted because it's very early in the game. You'll be level 3, people might be hitting level 4 in lanes. And then you sneak in right here, bam, you place a pink ward stealthily, and then you go about your business, and then you can kill the crab safely. You can see if you can counter jungle depending on any vision with that, maybe get a gank on bottom lane. This is a really strong one for the aggressive pink right here. Or just go back to farming Krugs. You know, you didn't clear Krugs in your first route, but it gives you a lot of control over the blue side of the map. Now, alternatively, if you want to get control over the top side of the map and do a nice gank on mid lane, now the route I mentioned before gives you a nice gank on mid lane as well from behind or from bottom lane. This one where you start Gromp Blue, Wolves, Red. So as I mentioned before, your smite will be back up at Race, your smite will be back up at Red. Do the red buff, and if you recall, you will have enough for your jungle item in the pink ward, just like I mentioned before. But that's not the one you're looking for. This one again needs a better leash than the previous one because you need to do red buff. But you take the doubles afterwards, and now here's what happened. You recall. Now the camp that is up is the Razorbeak camp. And by the time you recall, because you use your smite at red buff, that means that you can go out, and by the time you get to, say, the enemy's Razorbeak camp, your smite will be back up. So this one is heavily focused on vision denial and preventing the enemy from using their Razorbeak and you using yours. So you kind of nullifying Razorbeaks from the equation and putting a lot of pressure on mid lane. So you recall, you get your red buff, you get your blue buff, and you just walk all the way here with your new wards. If you did the doubles, you will have enough for a pink, a green, and potions, and your jungle item. You drop a green right here. If the enemy Razorbeaks are up, now you know that, more than likely he started on the blue side and either did kind of a farm for his jungle item recalled and is now going to be in that side, or he's going for a heavy farm or a really crazy gank route. Maybe he's doing for like doubles red to blue to bottom lane. So it gives you options. Now obviously, anytime that you're trying to predict the enemy jungler, always consider the possibility that he could just be doing an erratic gank and you can't predict that. Just always keep that in mind. So anyways, you drop a ward right there. If you can put it a little deeper, if it's safe, go for it. Otherwise, just ward the camp. All you need to know is have vision on him for a little bit. Maybe he doesn't even have smite to clear the Razorbeak camp. Doesn't matter. You need to ward it. If they're there, you take them. If they're not, you go ahead and go for a nice little gank on mid lane right here. If the gank fails, here's what you can do. Now you take your own Razorbeaks. If they're up or down, if your smite is down, even better. If it's not, still take him, because now he can't go there and get that passive off. And he is now struggling to deny vision because his trinket, his red trinket, if he activated on his first recall, cannot be used yet because it's still off on cooldown from purchasing it. So the only vision that now this guy has is a pink ward, which puts you in a really good spot because you have quite a bit of wards. You have a pink yourself and a green. Then you take your Razorbeaks and then you can just go ahead and go for a repeat on this side, especially if the ward that you placed earlier right here, let me put that ward right there. I'm gonna put a ward here. Oh, right. If you put that ward right here, if that ward is able to spot the enemy jungler going there, you have a really easy time. What the hell? Okay, you have a really easy time just going around for mid lane because you know there is no threat of being counter ganked. You can go for a gank on bottom lane as well. Now, just as the first route we talked about, this one also offers you the opportunity of going for a deep pink ward. It's a very dangerous move, and I would not recommend it. Only if the jungler shows can you go for that. But you can drop a pink ward right here. And that is going to be a really, really aggressive pink that if the enemy is not careful, will stay unnoticed for a long time. Especially if you also manage to take the Razorbeak camp, because if you take this camp, he won't have the Razorbeak passive up, and he will not know that he's being spotted. So he would actually have to check the brush or ward it himself to know what's there. And if he wards it, you know that there's a ward right there, and now you can plan your next move based on the ward that the enemy has. So those are two routes so far. Now, some more standard routes that I'd like to share with you are the classic. You got your Gromp start. You start at Gromp. You do your blue buff. Then you walk all the way down to red buff. You use your smite on red. You kill red, and then you go for a gank on anywhere really. Now this route works both ways. Now it's better on a Gromp start because you can use smite later on the red buff to stay healthy, right? You get your health back, you're healthier. Because if you start on Krugs, red, finish at blue, if you didn't get a really good leash or you're not a strong jungler, like say you're a Rengar, you're not going to be at full HP, and you're going to need to recall. I'm not even sure if Rengar can do this route, to be honest. I'm sure he can though. And then you have also, I mean, that route just really is purely for ganking. It's got nothing to do with the aftermath of recalling. It's just an early gank, and it's very strong. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a very strong route. They're all very strong, but this one just focuses on early ganks and early pressure. You're not setting yourself up for the future, but if you see the opportunity, by all means take it. And we also have the red start. Both sides, red start, doesn't matter, and you just do red and gank. You can do it with Krugs as well. Like if you're playing Jarvan, do Krugs, the enemy gets baited in, oh, he started Krugs, he's going to go to red buff, just do Krugs bottom lane. Krugs to bot and fuck him over, because they're not expecting that. Nobody expects that. Or if you're thinking that the enemy is going to be a weak jungler, let's say you got like a Amumu, you're jungling against Amumu. You know, Amumu can get a little low in the jungle. A nice one is that if you have the vision and know that he started Gromp, right here, he started Gromp, you go ahead and you're an aggressive jungler. You don't even need to practically be any jungler, to be honest. You start red, and by the time you finish red, if you got a leash, he will probably be finishing his Gromp as well. So you move out, and then you invade his blue while he's doing it. And then you, right off the bat, you create a commotion. And if your bot lane pushes, if you have a strong bottom lane, because both bottom lanes should have been leashing for the jungler, especially if they have a weak, like a Mumu, a weak jungler, then yours will get there at the same time. They push a little harder, you let them know that you want them to push, you invade, and now you can successfully deny somebody their blue buff. Or if you're feeling a little bit more sneaky, one of the ones that I really like to do as well, especially in solo queue lately, is Gromp start, and you need a leash for this. I have not tried without a leash or smite, but I think it's a lot better with it. So you start Gromp, and if you know that the opposing jungler is starting here, or if you're just flat out a much stronger jungler and he started Krugs, you do the exact same thing. So if he started blue, you do Gromp and then invade his red. And if you know he's in this side, just take it, take the red and go away. You can go ahead and take Krugs if you'd like later, doesn't matter. But if he started Krugs, do Gromp and then just meet him here and fight him. You will win that fight because you have the Gromp passive, that poison. It's going to work. Just be really careful though when you invade that you put yourself farthest from the jungle monster. Your damage is not going to matter nearly as much as the monster, surprisingly. So really make sure that when you're kiting somebody out, one-on-one in the jungle, that you position yourself away from the monsters and try to get him sandwiched in between the monster and you, so that he starts taking both sources of damage. And let's see, which other route do we have right here? Right, this is one that is also very common, and it's mostly about farming. For champions like Rengar or Vi, this one's a really common one. So it doesn't matter which side of the jungle you start on, whether it's Gromp or Krugs. And what you do is you do Gromp blue, Wolves back, or Krugs red, Razorbeaks back. And that gives you just enough, about 450 gold. Hell, if you do it too quickly, you might also have to wait a little bit in the fountain for some extra gold to be able to afford it. Whatever the case, your time will always be the same. It's just when you get 450 gold. So it's very, you can plan very well around that one. But if you get a good one, now I like this one on the red side, I mean on the red side of the jungle, because what happens is these camps are a little bit tougher. They're in Gromp. Like Krugs are a little bit tougher than Gromp. So usually you will finish Gromp, red, and Raze. And by the time you get to Raze, if you time it out well, you kill the small ones first, get the big one low to half HP, you can smite that one now, and get the passive, and then recall. And now, because you went back with the Razorbeak passive, when you go into your blue jungle, just like before, you know if somebody has your shit warded. You know if somebody's looking to 1v1 counter jungle you, especially if you're against someone like a Lee Sin, a Kha'Zix, a Shaco, more importantly. I'm sure you guys deal with that all the time. This one allows you to know if someone wants to start a fight in your jungle, and it's really useful because it'll last so long that it'll allow you to go and counter jungle as well. So let's go ahead, you do this, you clear your whole jungle, you're like, I want to counter jungle, and then you just go into the enemy's jungle, see if there's anything there to take. If there's not, you can go ahead, take the crab, then recall, and then go straight back for a full-on farm route. Always play around the vision that the Razorbeak gives you. It's extremely valuable, and try to use it as much as possible. That's why a lot of times you see a lot of junglers, well, it's one of the reasons, but they start with Ranger's Trailblazer because it helps you clear faster and keeps you healed, which allows you to be more liberal with the use of your smite. So it'll allow you to smite for the Razorbeaks a lot more often than not, unlike having a chilling smite. And then once you're about to complete your jungle item, just go ahead and switch it to the chilling smite. By that time your levels are probably high enough that you really don't need that heal. And just remember that when you are looking at these, you can change these up, right? You can always include, oh, something happened, I need to go for a gank. Something else happened, I need to recall, I got invaded. Or, oh, I can see a really great gank at level 2. I'm not going to go for anything else. Just be flexible, but what I just want to instill the idea of planning what you want to do in the future with what you're doing currently. So always be thinking that one step ahead, and you'll see a lot of success. So don't copy these directly. Just try to think in the way that these are thought out, and use that for yourself. So I hope you enjoyed that, and be sure to recommend any future ideas that you might have about this.